Hello friends, and welcome to another figure study, where today I'm finally taking a look at one of my top 10 figure acquisitions from 2019, almost halfway through 2020. But if you want to check out that top 10 video, you can see it right up there. Anyway, yes, that figure is, I guess spoilers if you haven't seen that video, Transformers Siege Spinister. And my opinion on this figure has not changed in the however many months it's been since I've had it. I love this thing. It's goofy and weird and just wonderful. I feel like this is probably one of the most unapologetically old school Transformer toys that we got in the entire Siege line, because look at this color scheme. It's like a Trapper Keeper from the 90s. It's wonderful. It's this almost neon reddish purple, and then a more sort of toned down purple, and then this strange grayish blue. It's great. It's a great, ridiculous color scheme. Also, the helicopter blades spin incredibly well. These spin pretty well too, but not as good as these. I like spinning these just because. But yeah, this color scheme is so weird, but I love it. And there are little ways that they kind of incorporated things throughout to kind of bring everything together, like how this blue that they painted over the cockpit, they brought a little bit of that into this section right below the rotors in the sort of pinkish bit back here. The purple for these bits is very similar to the purple used for this one particular gun. There's some really nice detailing throughout with the gunmetal-y colors and light blue. We'll see more of that in robot mode, but then there's the really nice big Decepticon logo on the side there, gunmetal vents there, and some more gunmetal detailing on the sides of the cockpit. And it's just really nice. I do think it would look better if there was a little bit more color in here spread throughout, like maybe a little bit of that blue back here. God, everything's getting in the way. Like maybe a little bit of that blue back here, maybe a little bit of that purple up here, or a little bit of that pink, but I still love it. I love the color scheme, and the color breakup is interesting too, how it's like the entire front part of the helicopter is the blue, and then it just kind of gets brighter and pinker as it goes back. It does have some issues though. One of the big things is you'll notice I actually have the guns on it, and I normally don't show accessories. That is because it looks kind of not great without the guns on. It's not as good looking. It's still okay from this angle, but then when you start to turn it, that's when you get that weird potbelly second cockpit down there, which is strange, and I feel like these guns kind of distract from that when they're plugged into the bottom here, but there are limitations. I don't really know how they could have handled this differently to get that out of the way. But the rest of it looks pretty darn good. I know people have complained about the fact that he's got obvious robot fists right there. And yeah, that's a fair complaint. But they more just look like gray blocks from here, which probably would have benefited from a coat of paint on the back so that they blend in a little bit more from that angle, but whatever. It's kind of a weird, goofy looking helicopter, but that's part of its charm, I think. The thing that kind of bugs me with the guns is, and I know why they did this, I know that they did one in purple and one in blue because Spinister originally was a Target Master and came with two little guys that you would just kind of stand up to be robots and then put down, like lean them, like tilt them down to make them into guns. So that's why one is purple and one is blue, because one is Target Masters was purple, one is Target Masters was blue, but seeing as how these are very important to the look of the vehicle mode, I feel like it would have been nice if it was either both in blue or both in purple. Moving on to the helicopter, as I said, it's really, really nice. I like too that the gray is pretty much kept to a minimum. It's just the rotors and then these little bits back here and the landing gear. The color scheme is definitely ridiculous, like I said, but I do like it. And there is some nice molding throughout. I mean, it's Siege, so of course there's some nice molding. But there is a lot of really nice detailing that I'm tempted to bring out. The only thing is, I'm hesitant to do panel lining on this guy because I feel like if I add a bunch of panel lining, then it'll really tone down this extremely garish color back here, and I don't want to do that because this is good stuff. I also think it's cool how there's sort of like circuitry-looking technical molded detail on the inside of the cockpit. Kind of makes it seem like maybe the cockpit isn't necessary, like maybe it doesn't need someone to fly it, which works for a sentient robot bad guy who probably doesn't want any humans riding in him. Anyway, aside from the color scheme, there's really not much else I can say about the helicopter mode, so let's move on to size comparisons. Here he is with a standard deluxe. In terms of just the scale of the toy, I think that works. And because I want to try and do something a little bit more current with this guy, more or less just because I just have to keep adjusting. Here he is with Earthrise Wheeljack. And here he is with the duck tank. Alright, let's turn this really weird looking helicopter into an actually pretty decent looking robot. And here we have Transformers Siege Spinister in his robot mode, and this is also very, very good. I appreciate how color-wise, the different shades and colors end up staying fairly similarly segmented as they did in the helicopter mode, where most, if not all, of the blue is in one section, most, if not all, of the pinkish purple is in another section, and then the purple is on the edges. So here you've obviously got the blue in the legs and lower body, pinkish purpley color in the upper body, and then the purple arms. And this looks great. It's still that garish color scheme, but in a way that works surprisingly well. And the robot by itself, like just ignoring the color scheme and looking at the silhouette, the detailing, this is a really cool looking robot with a really ugly shirt, and I kind of love that. And it's also one of those rare instances where I am semi-familiar with the original G1 toy because of Thu, yes, but like, it's really interesting to me how they managed to take this weird kind of mono-legged design that was just the helicopter cockpit that was like a stilt meant to be both legs, and turned it into a dual helicopter cockpit bell-bottoms thing. That's really interesting. Also, how many Transformers actually wear bell-bottoms that you know of? Because granted, I'm not an aficionado, but I feel like there aren't that many. The tones work really well together, the colors kind of clash, but in a way that works. And we'll get to that head, but I like the added bit of color and non-color that head adds to all of this. Plus, it's really cool how his helicopter blades just kind of tuck along the back and make this kind of V shape. And the way that the transformation works, it actually creates this little bit that kind of fits into this notch to keep the helicopter blades from turning too much. So they do wiggle a little bit, but they don't end up flopping all the way down. That's surprisingly clever. Yeah, if you wanted to, you could angle it down, but I prefer to have it up. A lot of the detailing for the legs, especially the lower legs, is stuff that was just the helicopter. Like the cockpit section, in this case, it is this leg that was the cockpit, and this was the underside of the helicopter, but they're both mirror images of each other, so they work as leg designs. Like you can see this kind of off-center radar thingy on both of them, but they're both off-center in a different spot, so it is symmetrical when you look at it as a whole. That is a nifty detail, and it works really well. I like the kind of Mega Man boots, the way they flare out, and again, kind of like bell bottoms, but this detailing is what you see in vehicle mode, where that was the top of the little side fin for the helicopter, and this was the other side fin. It's only when you get in here that you get some new detailing. And it is some nice detailing, some nice molding, some nice sort of dirty gunmetal stuff here, which this, as opposed to other Siege stuff, it doesn't look like it's dirt that's been brushed on. It looks like metal that's kind of been scraped up, and I like that look much better than just splattering dirt junk on the figures. And the midriff has some nice detailing too. I believe there's supposedly like different versions of the figure with slightly different coloration in the belly button area here. This is just the one I got. I kind of prefer that extra bit of color that was in the other versions, but it's fine, I can deal. And I also like how this silvery gunmetal-y detail that was visible, this was the underside of the helicopter on this side, but this was on the top. I like how these two elements come together and create this design that kind of goes across most of the torso on either side. The arms are neat. I like this little flare up on the edge there. It kind of looks like some weird shoulder pauldron effect, but at the same time, because it comes up like that, it accounts for the outward motion. And yeah, it does keep you from going up any further, but I feel like if you went up any further, it would look like you broke his arm. There's some nice molding throughout the rest of the forearm and some more of that kind of dirty metal effect on the forearm, which is fine. They even did some nice kind of wiring effect on the inner forearm, which is, yeah, hollow plastic, but I think they did some interesting stuff with it. And lastly, we come to that head, which is a great head. There's just something about this. It's kind of like a stretched out bean version of the Decepticon logo in a way, mostly because of this head crest. But I kind of like how the head is more vertically elongated. It's just something a little bit different than what I'm used to. The detailing and sculpting on it is nice. I like that matte black finish that the head has, and that turquoise mouth plate is just fantastic. This head is just a huge standout in a figure that's already pretty standout. There's just something about that extremely dark matte black with the bright turquoise mouth plate and the extremely bright yellow eyes. I love that yellow on the black. That's great. And yellow and blue are complementary, so that works with the turquoise. It's a great color scheme. It's a great design. The transformation is really interesting. The vehicle mode is a little bit goofy, but I'm okay with that. I actually do think it's pretty neat if you can ignore the weird underbelly cockpit. And the robot mode, despite its somewhat garish color scheme, looks really, really cool. And of course, since I talked about him before, we've got the guns, and you can do the thing where he, holds them like they're guns. And I know that there are target masters or weaponizers or weapon masters or whatever the heck they're called in Siege and Earthrise that are supposedly these guys for him, though the colors are wrong from what I've seen. I prefer this because they're just not as big and chunky and getting in the way. It's just, again, I would have liked if they were, the same color. I kind of wish I had two of these. But what I like to do is I put them on his hands, or on his forearm, so he's got kind of like gun gauntlets. I just think that looks coolest. And the reason I want to have two of the blue ones is because I feel like the purple here blends in a little too much with the arms. So here it's kind of a nice contrast, though the blending in, there is something to be said for that too. So really, I guess if I just had two of each, then I'd have options. But yeah, Spinister is super neat. There's not really much else I can say at this point, I don't think. So let's move him off to the side and get to those size comparisons that we're always doing. Here he is with a standard deluxe. Move him in a bit more. And here you can clearly see that he is tall for a deluxe. And compared to someone a bit more current, in similar lines, I'll bring them both a little bit closer here. Here he is with Earthrise Wheeljack, so here you can really see that he is definitely tall for a current deluxe. And here he is with the duck tank. Alright, that is gonna do it for Transformers Siege Spinister. It's been a little while since I've taken this guy off the shelf, but this video has reminded me of why he was one of my favorite acquisitions of 2019. There's a quality to this figure in particular, and I don't necessarily mean QC quality, though he is just fine in that regard. There's just something about him. As I said, really cool looking robot if you ignore the color scheme. The color scheme is goofy, but I like that it's goofy. The transformation is really interesting and not really something that they're likely going to be reusing for anything anytime soon. But regardless, let me know what you think of Transformers Siege Spinister, because I'm pretty sure it's an almost universal thing that everybody loves this toy. So I'm no exception. But whatever your thoughts, please feel free to chime in down below. I always enjoy hearing from you all. And remember, art is more than meets the eye.